All right. This morning, I submitted the final list of line item vetoes for the legislative and the executive branch budgets, which therefore finalizes each and every other part and signs those parts into law. So this week, we marked the end of the 2022 regular session. And as I just mentioned today, I took my final actions on the budget bills that have been sent to me by the General Assembly. In fact, I think as we stand here, we have now taken action on every single piece of legislation that has been sent to my desk. But I think it's important, especially with the budget, that we take a little time to explain to Kentuckians what is in and what is not in these budget documents, because these are your taxpayer dollars, and you have the right to know how the dollars are being used to move this state forward. Let me start on the positive side. There is a lot to be excited about in the upcoming 2022-2024 state budget recently passed by lawmakers. When I made my initial budget proposal in January, I was focused on making sure that we continue the economic momentum that our Commonwealth is experiencing. I wanted to make sure we made the game-changing investments in infrastructure like high-speed internet, cleaner water, roads, and bridges, while making it easier for emerging industries and other businesses to locate and expand in Kentucky. I'm pleased to say this state budget makes great strides in accomplishing these goals. And this budget helps ensure that every region in Kentucky sees economic prosperity with significant investments in higher education, with career and technical education, and in our workforce development. These are the areas that we must continue to invest in to become a national leader. I believe not only that we have an economy on fire that broke every single economic development record last year, that is on pace for at least the second best year of economic development in our history this year. But I believe in the post-COVID economy, we have a chance to be a top 10 economy in this country, that there is so much potential in front of us. So together, our job using this budget is to turn 2 incredible years of economic progress into 20 years of prosperity that reaches every part of the state and every neighborhood in every one of our cities. We started this budget cycle with unprecedented opportunity. Again, we just finished the best economic development year we've ever had, bar none, and it wasn't close. We had a record-setting $1.9 billion more in general fund than budgeted. We'd had the best back-to-back growth rate since 2005, 2006. We had the lowest debt ratio in the budget that we proposed since the policy was adopted. And we came into this session with the largest rainy day fund in our Commonwealth's history. And I worked to ensure these dollars would go towards making major investments in critical infrastructure needed to build a better Kentucky and create and attract jobs of the future. So there is a lot of good in this budget. I want to note, and I will discuss later, that this budget isn't the best it can be. And while we make some great investments in our future, the budget certainly doesn't meet the moment when it comes to K through 12 education. It thankfully provides a raise to so many, but intentionally leaves teachers, educators, and everybody who works in our public school system out. And I believe that's wrong. It fails to fund a no-brainer, universal pre-K, that not only would make every Kentucky child kindergarten ready, but it's the single fastest thing we can do to put people back into the workforce. You can't talk about putting people back into the workforce. You can't make cuts into our safety net claiming it's going to get people back, and then not do the simplest, most effective thing, universal pre-K, that would actually work. And we should point out in the beginning that the budget I proposed had the lowest debt ratio of any that's been submitted that we can find. The final budget coming from the House and the Senate borrows more money than any budget in state history. And it creates a number of programs and policies, those are through other pieces of legislation, that have zero funding in the budget towards them. Hundreds of millions of dollars of unfunded mandates. But some of the key areas that I proposed in my budget back in January that the General Assembly adopted that are going to help us do some good things. Let's start with the positives. Water and sewer improvements. We're going to keep expanding on an amazing program that we came together at the end of the last session on. That was using ARPA funds to help our local communities in water and sewer projects. Over the next biennium, $250 million will support the Better Kentucky Cleaner Water Program and provide clean drinking water and new sewer systems to Kentuckians. Clean drinking water is a basic human right, and having the necessary capacity, the pressure in your system is what keeps people safe. If you don't have that pressure, you can't fight fires effectively in neighborhoods. And especially for our rural water systems, these grants, because they're not loans, are so important because it's so costly to get those lines to the next set of houses. Already, we've announced projects given the last set of fundings that are going to get an elementary school in Boone County with its first reliable, clean drinking water in its history, and hundreds upon hundreds of Kentucky households are going to get hooked up and be able to turn on that tap for the very first time. I remember one of the first announcements we made with that money is in a town called Morton's Gap, small town in Hopkins County. I think it's smaller than Dawson Springs. And it was 6 to 8 families there that are going to get water for the very first time in their lives coming out of the tap. And just that first $250 million was projected to create 3,800 jobs. This next $250 million will again be projected to create another 3,800 permanent jobs. This is a win-win for Kentucky. The program's grown incredibly well. It puts the decision-making primarily in the hands of county judges and mayors, and we have seen communities come together in special ways. There's a small line item veto in that section that would just provide additional flexibility for counties, which again will control their dollars to pool with other counties. So for instance, when one wastewater treatment plant may provide service to 5 counties, those 5 counties, if they desire, could pool their dollars together to help upgrade that plant, which would be incredibly costly. And that single county that it's located in might not be able to do it alone. Second exciting piece, expanding high-speed internet. This budget directs an additional $100 million from the federal infrastructure bill and more than $2.3 million of state funds over the 2 years to support the expansion of high-speed internet. And for the first time, we're creating an office for broadband. This is incredibly important, and I appreciate working both with Representative Petrie, Senator Givens, and so many others on this new needed office. There are so many pots of money, from grants to federal dollars coming in from different pieces of legislations to ARPA funds to dollars that the state provides, that we need an office to coordinate it and to provide the planning full time. Thanks to this budget, we will now have that office. It'll be housed in the Kentucky Infrastructure Authority. Last session, through bipartisan agreement, Kentucky's Broadband Deployment Fund launched, which included $300 million in funds to address connectivity needs of the underserved and unserved communities. They required a 50% match of federal investments, creating a $600 million pool that will support broadband expansion in Kentucky. Listen, broadband is the most important infrastructure that's out there, and I'm not trying to discount roads and bridges. Broadband is critical for business, for healthcare, for education, for every part of our lives. And we have to have it in every county, every home, every business, every hospital, every government office. In the end, we have to connect everything. And what we see is this is a shared belief and a shared goal of both my administration and this General Assembly from the top to the bottom. Now, I will say there are a number of challenges to getting it done. But what I have seen by and large is no politics in it, is significant cooperation. And I look forward to continuing to work with the General Assembly in a constructive fashion to ultimately reach all of our dreams of every area, no matter where you are in the Commonwealth, no matter how hard it is to get that internet there, high-speed internet. Next is other pieces of infrastructure, primarily our major transportation projects. With so many businesses and employees landing in Kentucky, we have to continue to improve what I will call our hard infrastructure. We would not have landed Ford and SK That $6 billion investment we did last year, without an interstate right there, without the exchanges that are needed, without the access roads. And that's so important to continue keeping our Commonwealth moving forward. We have a great advantage over other states, and that is where we're located. And because of our numbers of interstates and airports and river ports, we can reach so much of this United States so quickly. It's why so many foreign companies locate their first full-time facilities in Kentucky. And we've got to invest to continue to make sure that's the case. So I appreciate the General Assembly agreeing on our proposal of providing $250 million from the general fund for major transportation infrastructure projects. This will help move forward our three biggest priorities: the Brent Spence Companion Bridge, the I-69 Ohio River Crossing, and the Mountain Parkway expansion. And by the way, we're going to be letting the next portion of the Mountain Parkway expansion in April. These one-time funds are not only going to help us to rocket forward, they're going to help us provide the very best application we can to the federal government for dollars that we have to compete for in that bipartisan federal infrastructure bill. This was a big deal. We are very thankful that the General Assembly agreed to it, and it puts us in a very solid position to compete with other states. Next piece, building a site identification and development program. As hot as our economy is right now, we have to understand that investments of the past helped us get where we are today. 20 years of investment in Glendale made Ford possible. You look at everything going on at the Bowling Green Trans Park, and that's been because of so much investment and continued investment in access roads that move through that facility. Now is the time to make investments in communities all across the Commonwealth that help them get the next Ford or the next Toyota, to be not shovel ready, but to be build ready. To help address this critical need, for the first time ever, the General Assembly has provided a $100 million fund to help develop megasites, and then another $100 million in what's called the PDI program, which again, through some different organizations, help prepare sites, helps do a lot of the early planning too, which is important to get every community area, everywhere we can find 50, 100, or 1,000 acres ready for that next business. Again, this is the first time the executive and the legislative have come together on a program like this. It recognizes where we are in the Commonwealth. And I've got to say, it again confirms and reconfirms that we will all put our politics aside when it comes to economic development and job creation. Speaking of that, of attracting new jobs, the Life Science Lab in Northern Kentucky, I believe, can be a game changer. It is funded in this budget. The budget invests $15 million in the city of Covington to support the construction and outfitting of a shared research and development lab facility to serve the rapidly expanding life sciences sector in the region. So in that region, we have a lot of pharmaceutical testing companies. We have one major company that did a whole lot of the trials for the various COVID vaccines. And we have an opportunity right there to create what we call a cluster that attracts other companies in this area, that brings us jobs of the future, not of the past, that helps us be the research and the development, not just the laborers, but the thinkers. This lab's time has come. It was not included in past budgets, but its inclusion here just shows where that region is going. Again, another great investment in economic development. And in one of the most important investments proposed by us, but embraced by both the House and the Senate, career and technical education. You may remember back that we did a $75 million pool in the last budget that helps career and technical programs in our high schools, primarily. Renovate and make sure that we've got the equipment and the training, that a Ford or a Pratt, that these amazing jobs of the future, a Novellus, can have the types of training that they will need, GE Appliances in Louisville, to ultimately have a skilled workforce of those kids, those young adults graduating from high school that are choosing not to go directly into higher education. We can make them workforce ready. And I'm telling you, when you walk a company, through a newly renovated career and technical center attached to our high schools, they see where their future workforce is coming from. They no longer doubt where those workers are going to come. So I think that this budget, and I'm grateful for this, makes a game-changing investment of $170 million to help renovate 24 locally operated CTE centers. In total, local area vocational center operating funds increased more than $58 million in addition to that, and state operated another $6.8 million. In my lifetime, I think this is one of the most significant investments in career and technical training. And having been able to make the awards this last year, I can see not only how excited the schools are, but how excited the students are and how excited the communities are to have this. And these are all over. A lot of these, for instance, are in Eastern Kentucky. I think Greenup and Carter County. Boyd, Carter, Greenup, and I got Rocky in the back. Fleming County, Carter County, and Boyd County are the three. So you look at areas where we have needed to attract more jobs, and these are the type of magnets that we can show employers and make that happen. Next piece, higher education. Listen, after $250 million, I believe, in cuts since the Great Recession, we are finally reinvesting in higher education in a significant way. And I'm proud that since I've been governor, I think we have put more than 80, maybe even 90 plus million dollars back into higher education of what was cut. Yes, I think we need to do more, but this is the largest addition of funds to higher education from the General Assembly in a long time, and it is a good step forward. The final budget comes close to my proposal as well by increasing funding for post-secondary education with $80 million each year. Combined with the additional $17 million in the prior budget, again, that's $97 million restored from those $250 million worth of cuts, really in about a 2-year span. The budget also funds the Bucks for Brains program, one that made such a difference in the past and will again, with $40 million to be matched dollar for dollar with private donations. Bucks for Brains helps the state support our world-class economy by aligning post-secondary education with emerging needs of business and industries. And for the first time ever, something the universities have been asking for, the budget funds what they call the Asset Preservation Fund with a major $683.5 million investment. Now, I will say I'm not a fan of the name because it's hard to understand what it is. This provides a pool where they can repair crumbling buildings and infrastructure so that that's not borne on the backs of our students through tuition. We cannot let our schools crumble, and the creation of this pool that universities can draw on is going to help make sure that what our universities can primarily do is focus on the future, focus on the education they're providing, the research and the programs, knowing that the state is a partner with them on their hard assets like their buildings. The budget also takes up my recommendation to support the state's 2 historically Black colleges and universities, Simmons College and Kentucky State University. We entered this session certainly with concerns about KSU, but I'm glad what we've seen is a commitment to it. We cannot let any of our universities fail, but we certainly can't let one of our HBCUs fail. We have a new board. We certainly have a lot of oversight, especially over the next couple years. It's going to be on KSU, on CPE, but also on all of us in the executive and the legislature to make sure we can turn this around. It's not red or blue. It's just critically important for our state. All right, and the next piece. Finally, a significant raise for state employees. The final budget includes an 8% across-the-board raise effective July 1, 2022 for state employees, and raises for fiscal year 24 will be dependent on the next session of the General Assembly. And let me just pause and say that because I've already submitted the line item vetoes, everything I'm reading is final. State employees know right now that they're getting an 8% raise here in this next fiscal year. And for that matter, the state police are getting their $15,000 across the board raise as well. That is final as of this moment, and we are thrilled that we are getting closer to paying our state employees and KSP what they are worth. The Personnel Cabinet will issue a report and recommendations over the coming year that will help us and help the legislature make determinations for fiscal year 24. They've talked about up to an additional 12%, and I will be pushing for that full amount. As we previously proposed, state social workers, family support workers, state troopers, vehicle enforcement officers, and public advocacy are also receiving targeted salary increases. Those are areas where we're having a hard time getting and keeping folks. So we are thrilled about what is in there. This is the first pay raise for workers since fiscal year 15. And that was just a 1% increase. This is a significant change that is long overdue, and everybody was on board and enthusiastic with making it happen. The budget also includes body cameras for Kentucky State Troopers for the first time, as well as funding to hire more than 200 new social workers. In a small explanatory piece, there is a very specific line item veto that refers to this part. So the final budget talked about 200 social service worker rank 1. And the only thing that we have lined item is the rank 1, because listen, if we can get an extra rank 2, but we can't find a couple rank 1s, we'll take them. We need social workers so badly. We made that just have a little extra flexibility, especially if retirees want to come back and have more experience. We want to welcome them back. Obviously, we are focused on those full 200 social service worker rank 1s. Those are our social workers, but just want to have that additional flexibility, because if we can get somebody who already has the training to do the work of 2 or 3 people, we just want to have the budget flexibility to do that. Expanding the Everybody Counts program. I want to thank the General Assembly for believing in this program. It's a pilot project in Jefferson County that will expand from there. And we are learning a lot this year. Its goal is pretty simple. It is to get every single graduating senior, and we hope one day across this state, either into higher ed, knowing how they're going to afford it, or having already signed up for a job and a good job before they graduate. In this past year, we had corporate citizens like GE Appliances, Ford, UPS, and Kroger step up and offer competitive packages to virtually any graduating senior of Jefferson County. And each of those packages offers future higher education if those individuals choose to pursue it. When we look at our workforce, the group that we have that suffers from the least child care issues, or for that matter, health issues, we need to make sure that our graduating seniors, that we give a path and a future to every single one. In this budget, we'll have $10 million to expand this important program. Next, I want to highlight areas where we're working to protect children, seniors, and families. We just planted pinwheels to commemorate Child Abuse Prevention Month. And to further carry out that and so many other important causes to address domestic violence and child abuse, the state budget increases funding to domestic violence centers, rape crisis centers, and child advocacy centers. It also provides full funding for senior meals, but I want to pause on that. It provides full funding for those that were on the wait list that before COVID we didn't serve, but with the elimination of emergency SNAP benefits. And if the cuts to our not generous, but really average safety net are ultimately enacted, it may not provide meals for every senior that goes hungry, but it is a significant step in that direction. I think it's $30+ million. It is a big deal, but I want to point out that but for those other pieces of legislation, we would have fed every single hungry senior in Kentucky. We hope to make that happen, but it's a bit more challenging when you see very difficult and I believe cruel cuts that when somebody gets knocked down, we ought to be helping them back up, not kicking them while they're down. But the final budget does provide both for that as well as a rate increase for residential and therapeutic foster care providers, and a $2 per child day increase in the child care assistance reimbursement rate. And this budget, along with a number of pieces of legislation, goes a long way in taking care of our veterans and our military community. I think this has been one of the best sessions in that area. I'm pleased the enacted budget makes significant investments in our brave military community. Funds are going to support the Military Family Assistance Trust Fund. We're going to create a permanent memorial honoring the Kentucky Medal of Honor recipients at the campus of Freedom's Foundation in Valley Forge, Pennsylvania. Right now, the one we have is not permanent and is not doing what we need to do to honor the people that that's meant to honor. We're also providing funds to expand veteran services, including boosting staffing at 4 Kentucky veteran cemeteries. We weren't able to help out at every veteran funeral at those cemeteries. We needed some more dollars. General Assembly came through. And we're going to phase in operations at the newest State Veterans Center in Bowling Green, which we are thrilled about. We want to thank our veterans and all of the work that they do. There's also a number of investments in our communities in this budget. They are really too long to list, but a couple that I'm certainly excited about: the expansion of Waterfront Park in Louisville to West Louisville. This is something we announced months and months ago that we were going to push forward with in this budget. I'm excited that it's happening. And at a time when we're working with Norton's on building the first hospital in West Louisville in 130 years, this expansion also in bettering people's lives and Goodwill's campus that they're building ought to create some excitement around doing the right thing, as well as investments in the Louisville Zoo, the orchestra, the Paducah Orchestra, the Barkley Regional Airport, and so many other programs throughout Kentucky. So we have a lot to celebrate in this budget. It's one of the better in modern history. But let me be clear that there are areas in this budget that failed to meet this historic moment. The biggest miss was not investing in education. The enacted budget has over $680 million less in SEEK than the budget I proposed. It does not fully fund pupil transportation, which is an obligation from the state, and it does not fund universal pre-K. Universal pre-K is a no-brainer. If we want to compete with other states and compete with the world, let's not leave any child behind. Let's have them all be kindergarten ready. It was just 9% of the extra dollars that we had in this budget. We could have provided universal pre-K for every Kentucky child. I will continue to fight for this. I will continue to fight for our educators. I think one of the things I disagree with most in this budget, aside from not providing the right amount of SEEK, not doing universal pre-K, is the lack of a mandatory raise for our educators. We had the money to provide to schools, and it's been done in the past. But I'm here to commit every budget that I propose going forward as governor is going to include a mandatory raise, not just for our teachers, but the entire staff and group that work in our schools, from the classroom educator to the custodian. We need you all. The budget also fails to restore past budget cuts to textbooks and to professional development. We want our teachers to be the best. We ought to pay them for their professional development. It leaves post-secondary students out of the Better Kentucky Promise Scholarship Program. I was going to provide last dollar for everybody getting a 2-year degree. That would have covered approximately 6,000 additional students in the first year and 9,700 in the second. It would have removed another barrier to getting at least that 2-year degree. And we also lost an opportunity to provide loan forgiveness programs for teachers and social workers. As we move forward, it's important to note that one of the repercussions of ending the pension system for various state employees is we no longer have a retention benefit. So when we look at state employees, they're paid less than the private sector. And so what type of benefit do they have to stay longer? Well, the reason people used to work jobs that paid less for 20, 30, 40 years is because the pension was a very big benefit. Once you remove that, then you suddenly compete every day with the private sector. And that's not just this year convincing somebody to stay. It's what happens next year. And with virtually nothing to lose by taking a private sector job, you can just have one bad day and we might lose one of our very best state employees. This budget also failed to include my $400 million fund to pay our frontline workers the type of bonus and give them the type of thank you that they deserve. Listen, they got us through COVID. They risked their lives. They risked the lives of their family. The very least we could have done is give them an attaboy and an attagirl, and we had plenty of dollars to do it with. To those individuals, you have my eternal gratitude. We fought hard for this, and we will continue to try to find ways to lift you up, to praise you, and if we can, to compensate you for taking on that danger head on. Over the past two budget proposals, I've asked for the General Assembly to restore cuts to a couple of areas that need them. One is our unemployment office. Now, for over a year, I heard, and rightfully, from our General Assembly that we weren't getting through all the claims that we needed to when people needed us to. But the General Assembly had cut over 90 positions paid for in our budget that would have had over 90 additional people processing those claims. Yet they have refused in every budget since that arose to ultimately provide funding for those individuals. And they refuse to do so in this one, while at the same time adding almost double the work that the office has to do with one of the bills that likely they're going to override our veto, where we're going to have to do not just periodic, but regular checks on virtually everybody in the system. So tell me how an office that doesn't have enough people to process claims, that is still working on a computer system that is older than I am, that it's going to take a little longer to get the new one in because now we have to change it based on the legislation if they override it. It's supposed to do twice the work when they already don't have enough people. That's just one example of a number of bills that provide hundreds of millions of dollars of work that needs to be done without providing $1 for the additional people or resources that are going to be required to do it. So let me just say that by failing to budget for these pieces, and we're going to be providing a letter to the General Assembly about what we need, there are going to be things in bills they pass that we can't get done. Because if a bill says you will do the work of 20 people with 5, we do our best, but it can't happen. It's basic math, number of people plus the number of hours. That's how much work that you can get done. Another thing that was left out was the Agritech R&D Center we want to build in Eastern Kentucky. Listen, we're fighting to be the Agritech R&D capital of the world. We have the largest greenhouse in North America in Appalachia. We are seeing companies like 80 Acres come to Kentucky because we have planted this flag. What I want to make sure is that we are the thinkers, we are the scientists, and not just the laborers. And that's what this piece was about. But if the General Assembly doesn't want to be a part of making us the Agritech R&D capital of the world, I'm going to work with the federal government to try to make that happen. We have a number of grant applications in right now. And if this General Assembly wants it to be the Biden administration's success, we'll take it. At the end of the day, it's important that our people and our companies, jobs of the future, get this opportunity. Now, I often talk about what's doing right. I often talk about doing what's right is by setting a good example in Frankfurt. And that's why my budget funded the Commission on Women. $1.9 billion extra. We can fund the Commission on Women. It's why I increased the dollars for the Commission on Human Rights. The General Assembly refused to do either. In the past, they claimed that not enough money was there. Come on. With $1.9 billion, you can spend a couple $100,000 to fund a Commission on Women. And what does it say with that much money for the General Assembly not to fund, to specifically refuse to fund the Commission on Women? General Assembly also failed to return all coal severance tax revenues to coal-producing counties. My budget would have, I think, returned more than $70 million more than the last budget. John Hicks will correct me on those numbers. They're not going to get nearly the amount that we propose to send back, and those coal counties deserve it, given what they have been through. And I cannot begin to understand why we haven't yet seen additional dollars freed up for counties ravaged by the deadly tornadoes in December. There's still a couple days left. These counties need help. We have the best budget outlook in my lifetime, surely we have enough compassion to be there for these counties and these folks, even if we don't get reimbursed by FEMA, to provide just a little bit of our abundance to help them rebuild. So, a couple of things on the line item vetoes. First, I line itemed in the legislative budget the 8% raise they attempted to give to themselves. Overall compensation, that's salary plus all the per diems and the rest for legislators, has grown to a swollen $60,000+ a year on average. That is more than double or close to double what an average Kentuckian makes. Giving a raise is not only wrong in that instance, but remember, that goes into their calculation of the pension that is paid out ultimately to those individuals throughout the rest of their lifetime. With everything that has been said through the legislature about pensions, doing something that increases their own, I do not think is right. But you know what? I'm going to live up to the same standard because I line item vetoed the same raise that was otherwise going to be given to the governor and every other constitutional officer. Most of the rest of the line item vetoes are technical. A couple of them were on some partisan sections, like making the Attorney General the final arbiter of any question about the budget. When I was Attorney General, it certainly wasn't the case. And in the end, courts are what decide laws, and the budget is in itself a law. I think we've passed out the rest of the line item vetoes. So with that overview, and I know that's a lot, I'm happy to take questions. I got a big, long list of journalists, and we'll try to get through everybody. Phil, you're first on my list.
You mentioned the lack of teacher raises. I know the lawmakers, the majority has said that they were wanting to give schools more money, to give school systems the flexibility to hand out their own individual raises. Do you feel like these school districts will not do that?
Well, if the General Assembly had intended to provide the means for every school system to give raises, they would have provided more money. When we look at the amount I was increasing SEEK by, almost $2 billion, every superintendent I talked to said, with that amount of money, yes, go ahead and mandate the raises. We can easily do that. But now, it doesn't guarantee every teacher, educator, and we talk about teachers a lot, and we should. Right? They're critically important, but that custodian we need, that we have shortages of. I mean, I talked to one school system employee, and their custodian was living in their car outside the school and showering in the gym. And we can do better than that. In the past, they have mandated raises for educators, for everybody in that public school system in the budget. And with the budget we have, we should have done it. And no, I don't think every school district will do it. But I will be really happy if they do. And I'll be really happy if they do it in excess of what we put in our budget proposal. I think a lot of them will. Rachel Droz. Do we have Rachel? Okay, she was on our list. Carolina.
When it comes to the teacher raises, the reason lawmakers say they did not provide those is because teachers are not state employees. They say they're employees of local school boards, which is why they don't feel it's right to mandate these raises. How do you feel about their reasoning for that?
The General Assembly has mandated raises for teachers and school employees in the past. They had a chance to do it, and they had more money than at any time in our history since CARA that they could have put into it to make it happen. And you look at our teacher shortage, you look at shortages throughout the school system for underpaid folks. You look at the fact that new teachers don't have a pension, so there is no retention bonus. We got to give raises, not just because it's the right thing to do and they shouldn't be left out, but we got to give raises to stay competitive, to have enough teachers in the classroom. And we got to get beyond where we are now, where I think there was one period where we had only one certified physics teacher, national board certified in the state. If we believe in workforce development, K through 12 needs to be strong. It needs to be stronger. So it had been done in the past. We were going to do it in our budget. We could have provided more than enough money to do it. I think it's just an excuse from folks that teachers may not have agreed with everything they did in the past. But listen, cutting teacher raises, they didn't do it because of who teachers support or who they vote for. They did it because teachers won't be bullied, and they'll continue to fight for what's right no matter what. Mark?
In February, you mentioned that you hoped the Brent Spence companion bridge would break ground in 2023. And with the funding seemingly in place in the House Transportation Budget, House Bill 242, which you signed, do
Yes.
you think this will happen next year?
I am more optimistic today, given that most parts of the budget are finalized, that we will break ground on the Brent Spence Companion Bridge in 2023 than I have been at any time. The General Assembly stepped up and gave us every dollar that we asked for to be as competitive as we can on that grant, and in fact have budgeted for virtually every dollar we think it would cost us on the state side to get that project done. It's a big statement. It's a big step. Absolutely the right thing for them to do. And it's an unprecedented step they're doing for an unprecedented project. It's really going to help us in that application. Mark.
You mentioned the tornado relief funding. Was this beyond HB5? And could you elaborate on what else was being signed?
So HB5 created a pool of money for tornado relief. It went ahead and created the framework. They've already put the guardrails out there about what it can and cannot be spent on, but it only opened up, of the pot of money they created, $45 million that could be spent. It only opened up 30 to the school system and 15 to buy travel trailers. But what it didn't open up is any of those dollars to help our counties with what they have to front for debris removal until FEMA reimburses them. I mean, if you have $5, $7, $10 million of debris removal in these counties, that can bankrupt you. And so what we're trying to do is be there for them, maybe be able to provide some small business assistance to be able to help in a number of different ways. That could have been done in the budget. They still can do it in the last couple days, but how far are we in a session for tornadoes that happened in December? And admittedly, I'm really surprised. And for anybody who says we're not just going to give unfettered discretion, they already created a whole system of allowable uses like any other program we administer. It's time to step up and say we care about the people of Western Kentucky, and we're going to provide those funds.
And the original proposed amount was $200 million, right?
It was right around there. Yeah, I mean, all we need is at the moment for them to open up the amount overall that they put in. And that bill's still there, and it can still pass, and we still hope it will pass.
What was that bill number?
I'll get that for you. Senate Bill 150. See, they start back at 1 at every session, so they all kind of come together. Joe, where is Joe? There you go.
Specifically with that bill, actually, 'cause I talked to the sponsors of that because I was curious about why that wasn't worked out. And they said it was because of FEMA issues. They were wanting to make sure that they had everything good to go so that they weren't running afoul of any federal rules. Do you have any communication with the sponsors of this?
So opening up the dollars isn't about when we provide them and to what issue. We're working with FEMA to make sure that we don't run afoul of any of their reimbursement. But that's something that's done through our Office of Emergency Management and FEMA. Opening up dollars to other things they can do. But I want to make an important point. We ought to open up some of these dollars even if they're not reimbursed. Right? Because counties are going to have huge expenses that ultimately aren't going to be reimbursed by FEMA. They're just not. And with the state budget in a great place where it is, counties not having those same resources, let's step up and be there for them. Right? If we're going to provide $1 million here or $1 million there to different programs across the state which this budget does. It has a number of specific projects in it. Let's at least provide the same level, if not more, to some things that won't be reimbursed. I'm actually more concerned about some of the things that we need to do that aren't going to be reimbursed for those counties than are.
If I may ask a separate question, because I just want to follow up on that specifically, but more broadly, the Republican Party put out a statement during this press conference. I kind of just want to get your
That means I haven't read it.
Well, I'm going to read part of it verbatim and just kind of get your response to it because I figure it'll be easy enough to do on that regard. But basically it says, the governor spent the entire legislative session on the sidelines and refused to engage with the General Assembly in any meaningful way. How would you respond to that?
Not true. I mean, whether John would talk about the number of meetings he's done, but let's back up and say this General Assembly was the first one in history where the House submitted an executive branch budget before the governors without talking to the executive branch. In other words, they attempted to intentionally exclude the executive branch from its own budget. Listen, that statement is about politics. We had meetings on broadband. We had meetings on water and sewer. Actually, we met with Senate leadership for 4 or 5 sessions over things in our budget and why they needed to be there in the end. So I get politics, but it's just not true. And you know what? There are times where if I insert myself publicly, they puff their chests and won't do something that's good for Kentuckians. Listen, I think that's wrong, but if I know that that's going to be the reaction, I'm going to be the adult in the room and try to do whatever gets us to our best outcome. Monica.
Hi, Governor. I was asking a question about universal pre-K. So we heard from some lawmakers that said if we do universal pre-K, it will annihilate our private sector business of childcare centers. Do you believe that that would be true if we invested in universal pre-K?
And how many other states have universal pre-K? And how many of them no longer have a childcare industry, right? The fact is the childcare industry will have to adjust with universal pre-K, but look at the challenges we have right now. I believe there's a front page story on the Courier about lack of available childcare and how much it costs. So the average childcare worker makes about $13 an hour, which means they can't get enough people to come to childcare to have enough childcare for folks. But if the federal studies are right and it takes $26 an hour, nobody can afford childcare. So right now, we simply don't have a solution. And universal pre-K gets us closer to that solution. We've got to look at, first of all, let's start with the family instead of an industry. Think about the family that just makes enough money that they don't qualify for Head Start, but there's no way they can afford pre-K. Look at the parent that right now pays, what, $12,500 a year for childcare that's already struggling to get by. That's why one of the reasons we have so many women that haven't come back into the workforce. And if we truly believe in workforce, this is the fastest way that we can adjust. Yes, there are some legislators who work in or directly run a childcare facility, but that's a direct economic interest. We're ready and willing to work with childcare, but if we can step back and say, this isn't working, let's find another way to do it. Universal pre-K is the fastest way to get us to where we need to go. Austin Horn, I think, is digitally.
Thank you, Governor. I'm wondering what your office in the next few days is going to work the hardest on to try and get back into the final version of the budget, and what maybe the most realistic priority is to get back in there.
So at this point in a budget, we rarely see things added back in. There are some pieces, some line item vetoes that we have made that I think make sense, that give us necessary flexibility. We're going to be spending a lot of time trying to make sure we explain those and their importance. Certainly there are a piece that's very small in the new social workers that would give us more flexibility to reach our goals. There's an error in parts of the budget that would prevent investigators in the AG's office from getting a bump in the CLEP fund. That's the amount of money that you get each year if you complete your ongoing education as a law enforcement officer. We want to make sure they get those amounts. And a couple other pieces that we think are important, like in water and sewer, with the concept that one county has the water sewer treatment plant and it serves 5 counties. And the needs and the size of the needs in the one county that has it by far exceed the allocation they're getting in water sewer. Well, it makes sense if the other counties agree, and it'll be up to them to reach an agreement to be able to pool that money to do a bigger project. Those are some of the things that we'll be looking at right now. Also wanting to get the tornado relief done before we leave. But here's my hope. So we saw 100 bills pass in a day. And when we sat down and read them and found, for instance, one of them that I vetoed today would allow the Kentucky Public Pension Authority to hire 6 individuals at any salary they would like. There is no cap whatsoever. And after that power was given to Matt Bevin, he hired one of his buddies at about $350,000, something that everybody thought was atrocious. How in the world would we give unlimited flexibility there? Now, that's what happens when you pass 100 bills in a day, and most people haven't read one of them. My hope is that they will sit down and read the vetoes and not simply say, we're from a different party, or we'll show the governor, to be adults, to analyze them. And on some of them where we may be right, to say, okay, and then move on to the others. Tom Latek, Kentucky Today.
Thank you, Governor, and good morning. You talked about what some of your biggest disappointments are in the budget. Did you have any pleasant surprises in what they sent you?
Yes, absolutely. On a number of areas. I mean, this budget has a lot of really good things in it. And that's why we tried to focus at least the first half of the press conference on it. The other side might have missed that in their statement. But look at higher ed. This is the most significant funding for higher ed since the Great Recession. That's a big deal. The career and technical training. This is the largest investment I think I've ever seen in that. The state police raises, the state employee raises, I mean, are really big compared to the past. And I hope we're not done and we'll work together the next session. Everybody counts. So everything we talked about here are really good parts of the budget. The Economic Development Fund. I will say that the legislators were willing to think outside the box, to think of new areas and in areas where we've worked well together to provide some additional funding. But again, they rightfully put some guardrails on it, and we need to work through what those appropriate ones are, but provided that they work, that they have just enough flexibility to get the job done, but have enough accountability to where everybody is comfortable. Now that's the sweet spot that we look for. But no, this is a better budget than we've had in a while. I'm just disappointed it didn't meet the moment with K through 12 and with universal pre-K and with raises for teachers. Melissa Patrick.
Hi, Governor. Do you think this budget goes far enough to address the healthcare worker shortages? I'm seeing 3 big initiatives in there, but I was wondering if there's something you wish they'd done that they hadn't done.
I hope it goes far enough on the healthcare worker shortage. And we will implement these programs, and we will report back and communicate about how well it's going. I will say I had some real good discussions, especially with Senator McDaniel, about retention in the healthcare field and about retention in state government. And I think these are things that we're going to try, and we're going to hope that they work well. They went in some ways a little bit different than we did, but that doesn't mean we're not going to try to make them work. We're going to put in all the effort that we can. I think student loan forgiveness, though, is one we need to look at in the future as a real solution here. It's not just a solution to keep people in a certain number of years, and that's when they get the loan forgiveness, but we're forgiving dollars that go into our Kentucky school and higher ed system. In many ways, we're supporting higher ed at the same time as retaining those professionals. And so that's a win-win. But Melissa, one area that I didn't talk about that the budget doesn't go far enough on is public health. We don't have any dollars for any future COVID mitigation. If this subvariant pops up, that is a significant concern. And certainly we needed more dollars for our state lab and other resources there to be better prepared in the future. Do we have Joe? Joe Sonka.
Thanks, Governor. You vetoed House Bill 90 today, or sorry, 690. That's the one allowing attorneys to bring guns in the courtroom. Just explain why you vetoed that. And also in the last 2 days of the session, are there any pending bills that still have a realistic chance of passing that you want to see cross the finish line? Thanks.
I want to see Kentucky finally legalize medical marijuana. And so do 70 plus, maybe even 80+% of Kentuckians. When the people overwhelmingly demand it, the only thing keeping it from happening are we don't have ballot initiatives. And then the legislature right now won't follow the will of the people. We also need sports betting. Everybody else has it. We don't see major problems coming from it. And those are just dollars going to other states. On 690, let me start by saying I'm a strong proponent of the Second Amendment. I've stood up for Second Amendment rights. Sometimes I've taken flack for that, but that is in our Constitution. But you can be a strong supporter of the Second Amendment and realize that we shouldn't put into place something that can put someone on trial for murder, sitting directly next to someone that may have a concealed weapon, just inches from them. You cannot shackle a defendant in the midst of a trial because it creates the presumption of guilt. So we put somebody that may be or is being tried as a violent criminal right next to a weapon that the bailiff doesn't even know where it is. And that puts at significant risk everybody in the courthouse. The other thing is it doesn't just talk about lawyers who are being lawyers. It's anybody who's licensed. So imagine a husband and a wife in the worst divorce proceeding, domestic disagreement. They can both now carry in weapons as well. I received letters asking me to veto this from the Fraternal Order of Police, obviously strong supporters of the Second Amendment, of the Commonwealth Attorneys Association, of the County Attorneys Association, the Chief Justice, AOC. These are people who try to keep us safe, and we're telling us this is a really bad idea. James Pilcher, WKRC. Okay, Emily Bennett, WSAZ. Okay, Gil McClanahan. I knew Gil would hold on.
Oh, you know it. I'll hold on to the end, last but not least here. I wanted to ask you, you brought up medical marijuana a few seconds ago. I wanted to ask you about something that you had said last week, that you're looking into possible executive action regarding medical marijuana. First of all, how far along are you with that? And secondly, what could you potentially, and I say quote unquote, legally do as governor regarding executive action?
So our efforts to date on medical marijuana have been to try to get the piece of legislation that's being considered in the best place possible. Appreciate that there were some changes made between last session and this session that could help us better regulate it. But we're going to look at what legal options are out there. We're going to look at potentially bringing groups together in an official capacity to provide advice to the veteran out there suffering from PTSD, that this could provide some relief. It's time that you got what you need. To that senior suffering from glaucoma so bad they can't see, that this could provide relief. It's time that you get what you need. To that person that this might just help not have an opioid prescription, my goodness, opioids have devastated our state. It's time that we look at those options. So I'm going to have certainly our attorneys in the executive branch, as well as others that are interested, look at and explore every option, because this is the will of the people. I hope that the legislative branch will listen to it. If not, we're going to explore executive options. All right. Thank you, everybody. Whoa. All right, Rachel Droz.
Yes, I got put on the in-person list. I apologize about that. I am virtual today, but I have two questions that are completely unrelated. First, do you think that you can realistically find 200 qualified social workers, just with the shortage that we are seeing nationwide, to fill the slots that you guys are opening up? And then two, for those who still have pending unemployment claims, can you guarantee money will be there once your unemployment office gets to their claims and it comes time for that person to be paid?
Yes, I believe that there will be money for those who are owed it from unemployment. I believe that it will be there. I don't think I can guarantee it because I don't know each of their circumstances and whether or not they qualify, whether or not their claim was filled out correctly. We get a lot of questions from the media about individual claims where the individuals don't qualify. And while we wish we could help them, there's nothing we can do to circumvent federal law and the questions that have to be asked and have to be answered. But here's the thing. We've asked just to be returned to the level that our unemployment office was before the Bevin administration and the General Assembly cut it so badly. And now they're being given extra work. And we still don't even have the level and the size that it was before then. We have resolutions asking us to open regional offices, and we don't have the slots of the people that worked in those regional offices. So they are trying their hardest. We in the executive branch are trying our hardest, but we're not given reasonable resources to get there. And now we're being given 3 times the amount of work. That may make it harder to get to people's claims that otherwise we would get to. Do I think we can fill the 200 slots? I hope that we can. We desperately need more than that number of social workers, but I think you got a budget for success. right? If we had just set a budget for 50, I set it for more than 200. You set a very low goal. If we hit 80% of this goal, that's better than hitting 90% of a lower goal. So we're going to work as hard as we can. CHFS, that's the cabinet that's going to be doing the hiring, knows that this is one of our top priorities. All right, this was a long one. It harkens back a couple years ago. So thank you, everybody. Again, a lot of opportunities in this budget, some misses, but we are going to do our very best with it for all the people of the Commonwealth of Kentucky.